With the Keeper of Traken, we have the penultimate adventure for the fourth Doctor. So it's almost over. And once again, there's certain themes of passing on and coming to an end. In this case, the title character, the Keeper of Traken, which is this sort of... well, it's an overseer of this space union, or empire, if you will, of Traken. And apparently, it's just the most wonderful empire that ever was. Everything's all about peace and harmony. And it's just great. Except in the story, we can see there's several examples of corruption and that sort of thing. But nevertheless, they had a pretty good run. And the power that they enjoy comes from something called the Source. And it requires a keeper to maintain it. And this grants this person all kinds of powers and whatnot. But the catch is you got to sit in this chair for 1,000 years or something like that. So, well, this particular keeper is coming to an end, and he reaches out to the Doctor, who has just now escaped from E-Space along with Adric, and suddenly the keeper appears and is worried that there's some evil afoot within Traken, and fears that this might cause trouble for his successor and all that. So he gives them a little background on this creature known as the Milker, which just looks like, some modern art statue in the middle of... In fact, it was based on one. But sitting in this garden. Apparently, the idea was that Traken was so good that it drew evil to it in an attempt that it could corrupt it or whatnot, but no, the goodness was so great that it couldn't. I don't know. So the original Melker just becomes sort of frozen and becomes calcified, and it's basically just this statue. Becomes some sort of spiritual symbol for the people there and that sort of thing. And this girl is assigned the task of attending to it. And all of that, and she later grows up to become the wife of Tremas, who was to be the Keeper's successor out of these councils, who basically form the governing body of Traken. Well, evil is afoot. It is coming from Milker. And some murders happen and all this stuff, and of course the Doctor and Adric arrive. They get blamed. The Keeper dies. They need a replacement. Turns out the woman Cassia, it looks like it to me, is more in love with the statue than she is her husband. She cares about her husband, but she doesn't. Her initial motive here in betraying Traken is that she didn't want Tremas to go away, because once he becomes Keeper, that's pretty much it. There's no marriage anymore, and he's floating around in that chair taking care of the whole interstellar union of Traken. So that's one thing, but on the other hand, she's pretty jealous of their daughter, her stepdaughter with Tremas, of course, is Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton, who will go on to be a new companion for the Doctor. Well, she's been assigned to succeed her in this task, and now granted, it's the idea that she might stumble upon the plot here for that Melker has, but she's so enchanted and enticed with Melker that when Melker begins to speak to her, he's never done this before, she's immediately won over, and then it's too late to get out of it. He gets her to wear this collar. He can torment her with it and all this stuff, and sure, it's kind of sad and whatnot, but ultimately it's her own fault, her own selfishness and jealousy, and her bizarre obsession with this statue. So Melker sets her up to he says, oh yeah, we can keep Tremas from being the Keeper. So they ruin his reputation and insist that he's in a plot with the Doctor and Adric to some nefarious deed, and so he falls from favor, and Cassia ends up becoming the new Keeper. She wasn't crazy about this, but of course, with the collar on her, she can't really disobey Milker. So she takes the chair, and guess what? Oh no! She collapses into nothingness, and suddenly the keeper appears. At this point, it becomes pretty obvious what's going on here, especially some of the other scenes that there's the Milker is not what he appears. And of course, it's a TARDIS, and there's a rogue Time Lord. And if there's any weakness to the show, it's the Doctor doesn't figure this out, because he even realizes that some of the mysterious signals giving off in the Grove and whatnot. He says, "Wow, that's almost like a TARDIS, but the Type 40 can't do that." And all that. So it's obviously another TARDIS, you know. And so even if he doesn't figure out who it is, he knows that this is a rogue Time Lord, but he doesn't quite catch on to that. So basically, the Milker statue is a TARDIS, even though it also had the ability to walk around on its feet. But anyway, it just used Cassia, and she had, you know, that link through the collar and whatnot. So that's it for her. And he's in the chair, and he wants the power of the source for his own ends. But oh, why would he want that? Well, of course, it's the Master. And now one could, I suppose, surmise, if they wished, that the Master set this whole thing up from the beginning, put this Milker TARDIS in the distant past to set up the legend about it and everything. And then because he has another TARDIS, he's got his one we saw at the end of Deadly Assassin, which looks like a grandfather clock. And of course, a grandfather clock, no brainer there on what a TARDIS shape a TARDIS could take. And if they hadn't come up with the police box, I kind of wondered if that might not have been the Doctor's TARDIS. But anyway, so the Master's using it, and he keeps it in there. But he's got this other ship. So I mean, the idea that, but it doesn't need to be that way. The Milker was real, and was just there, and the Master is looking for another source of power, since he failed to manipulate the Eye of Harmony on Gallifrey to restore his regeneration. And oh yes, the Time Vortex is the key to regeneration. Yeah, not the Timeless Child. No, sorry. It's just, canon doesn't matter. Well, then nothing matters. It doesn't matter. So I can say the Timeless Child never happened. See, that's how that works. It's very stupid when you do that as an excuse to cover up your laziness. But when there's too much of that already established, you really can't go back on it. So, or you have to come up with some explanation for it, which you didn't. So now the Master, and you also have to conclude that he's in pretty bad shape when we saw him in Deadly Assassin, you know, looking like Skeletor and everything. He's still emaciated, but he's not quite, of course, it's a different actor and everything, but still, he's not quite as bad off then, because he was on his way to restoring himself in that before the Doctor stopped him. So he got some recitation there, or rejuvenation. I wouldn't quite say regenerated, but he bought himself some time with it, and now he's seeking another source of power, and it's the actual source itself. And so ultimately, so he's going to use that and use the power to conquer worlds and all that, but he wanted the Doctor in there so that he could steal the Doctor's body. Somehow he discovered he could do that through the powers of the Keeper, and once he took over the Doctor's body, he would have the rest of the Doctor's regenerations to live out. And so that was his plot. Well, the Doctor had a plan of shutting off the source from him. Adric knew about it, and he and Nyssa do this. Kind of, I mean, he did explain it to him, and Adric figures it out, but it's almost kind of happenstance. But nevertheless, it works out. And as a result of that, the Doctor is able to free himself from the Master's Milker TARDIS, but the Master escapes in his grandfather clock TARDIS. And of course, with the powers of the Keeper still lingering somewhat, he's able to use that in order to take over Treemass's body. And of course, this introduces Anthony Ainley as the new Master. The thing about the Master, I kind of wish there had been more stories with him for Tom Baker's Doctor. We only got a few. And at this point, they were heading for a new doctor, which, of course, would be Peter Davison. And I think they wanted to get back to that business of the Master being a recurring villain that the Doctor has to deal with. But it's this kind of thing of, obviously, Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty type deal between the two. It would have been a cool thing for the Fourth Doctor to deal with. But it didn't happen as much as I thought it should have. I mean, I guess they were just tired of it. They thought they had worn it out with Pertwee. I don't know, but Baker was there for a while, It seems like they could have utilized him here and there. But, what have you. And as I think I remember hearing somewhere that it wasn't always going to be the Master in that story. But at some point, I think they hit on it and realized that, and obviously these shows are geared to lead right into the next Doctor and all that. So anyway, you get there a roundabout way. This is a show that's shot completely on soundstage, but it doesn't matter. The designs are good. The only thing about it is it's something they obviously, I guess, couldn't do, is that these days you probably could have obviously used some CGI to have some establishing shots of the grandeur of the populace of Traken and that sort of thing. And that's really all you would need. But the designs are good. I mean, sure, there's a few scenes it's obviously going down the same hall and stuff, but it's all pretty cool. The costumes are great. They're, of course, reflecting certain medieval styles and whatnot, but at the same time, actually probably more Renaissance. But anyway, still looking alien, and even the weapons had these stylized looks to them. By the way, another episode where the Doctor uses a gun several times. I mean, granted, it's kind of just a phaser on stun, but still, which can still be dangerous. You don't know. The guy might have some kind of condition or something. But anyway, so a lot of that. And certainly an important episode as it introduces the Master back into the story. But boy, he took a liking to that Traken outfit. I sure hope he watched it. But anyway, and that's another thing about that. It's the powers of the Keeper of Traken or whatnot, because the Master just sort of fades into Tremas's body, and then suddenly Tremas is, his hair, he gets a haircut and it's black and stuff instead of being long and white. And the clothes change. So you have to understand that this is the molecular structures between their clothing was even being rewritten and everything. And so it's aspects of the Master as he was. Because a lot of times people say, well, Anthony, he was just kind of doing a knockoff of Roger Delgado as Master. And sure, but at the same time, I'm of the thinking that is the Delgado Master, all completely emaciated after, whatever happened to him. And rather than just being another regeneration that we never got to meet before, we did meet him, but before he got, all messed up. So when this taking of Tremas, it still looks like Tremas is a young man or what have you, but still there's elements of the Master there, and obviously it is the Master. It's just Tremas is no more. But it's pretty interesting. Keeper of Traken is another one that I looked at and think of as a potential for follow-ups and whatnot. In the case that you could have done a story where Cassia's ghost haunts the Master's TARDIS. I just kind of thought of that one while rewatching it this time around. But the overall thing was that the power of the Keeper and stuff like that could have been utilized. And I would have thought that even though, spoiler for next episode, Traken will be destroyed as a result of the Master, but it was an empire, a union, so there's other worlds that perhaps the Keeper could have had foresight enough, the new Keeper that they have at the end of this episode, to rescue and evacuate a number of people. And that ultimately, at some point, Nyssa could return in a revenge plot against the Master, and that she would be the Keeper of New Traken, and whichever Master they have, that could have been an interesting thing, and ends up going up against the Doctor who, of course, for some dumb reason, has a soft spot for the Master these days. Yeah, I know they were buddies way back when, but good Lord. So, that kind of thing could happen. That there would be a new Traken, and now Nyssa would have all these Traken powers, and she'd be tracking the Master. Stuff like that. But anyway, a good episode, and of course, I guess you could say it was on the cheap. Of course, I don't know how much it cost to make all those sets, and not a location shot in any of them, but still, of course, so much better if it could have been shot all in film, but yeah, that's costly too. So anyway, it's a good episode. It's not on par with the best of the Fourth Doctor's run, but it's not a bad one on his way out. So yeah, Keeper of Traken's a good one, and yes, I think it has elements that could be revisited, and it also gives some of the babble to this super cosmic stuff that they're going to get into, especially in the next and final episode for the Fourth Doctor. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.